There's so many new buffs. There's been so much time since our last first prediction of the starting lineup. So, on today's episode of Locked On Buffs, yours truly, I'm going to predict who the starters are for your Colorado Buffaloes as we approach fall camp and the season. Less than 60 days away now. I appreciate you guys for tuning in. Let's talk about some starters on today's episode of Locked On Buffs.
You are Locked On Buffs, your daily podcast on the Colorado Buffaloes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, everybody? This is Locked On Buffs. I am your host, Kevin Borba. Sorry, someone's messaging me right when I start recording. Okay, today's episode, we're going to be talking about who I think will be the starters in both offense and defense, maybe even special teams if I'm feeling a little special. We're going to be talking about Colorado's most important game. Hint, it was against Stanford, according to one source, but that's not my most important game for the Buffs. And then there's more expansion rumors in the Pac-12, so I, of course, will be talking about those because I think those are some of the most interesting things in college football happening at the moment, in a moment where it's like a silent kind of period. So without further ado, I believe it was probably my first month or so of Locked On Buffs. I had Jack from Buffalo's Wire come on, and together we predicted the starters. And while I think we did a good job at that time, I would say probably 60 to 70% of the players that we had starting are no longer with the program, because obviously all of the stuff happened after the spring game. All the transfers happened after the spring game. So we're going to dive into who I think will be starting. This is Locked On Buffs, your team every day. That's what I do here. And the Buffs, they got a lot of new people, a lot of new faces, a lot of new competition everywhere. So I'm going to break down who I think can be the starters. We'll go defense first, because I think while a lot of people get upset with talking about the defenses, there's a lot of interesting things out there on the defense. So let's dive right in. Let me pull up my handy dandy roster right here so that way I can make sure I don't miss any positions. Okay, up first we have edge at one of our edge rushers. I'm going to go Jordan Dominic. I'm not going to buy into that video of him looking a little out of shape and the coach making fun of him for not having abs. I think he'll be just fine. I think when you get 7.5 sacks in the SEC, I think not that he has a right to not be taking their off-season program seriously, or maybe the coach was just joking with him. I don't know. But I think he's going to turn whatever struggles, even if he wasn't having struggles, I think he's going to lock in and be ready. This is likely his last season of college football, if I'm not mistaken. So if he wants any shot at having an NFL career, he needs this one to be either his best season or a really, really good season. So Jordan Dominic at edge. I think a lot of people have been looking at Leonard Payne from Fresno State as a nose tackle. I think it's going to end up being either Amari McNeil from Tennessee or Bishop Thomas. And I think Leonard Payne will get a lot of looks, but I think Amari McNeil offers a bigger body. Obviously, he's a little less experienced, but I think he comes in, offers someone who could kind of just swallow up the interior offensive lineman and make life easier for the edges and all that. So I'm going to go Amari McNeil instead of Leonard Payne, but I do think Leonard Payne will see a lot of action. Our defensive tackle, Shane Cokes. I don't think that changes. I think he's probably going to be a captain of the team if he's not already. He was one of the guys that were talking to the newcomers when they all got there around the summer workout session time. So I think Shane Cokes has got a spot pretty much locked up. Plus, I think the interior defensive linemen are that's probably where I'd be most concerned about this team on defense. There's either inexperience or just haven't played at a Power 5 level yet, which obviously you guys always get all upset about playing at Power 5. There is a difference, whether you want to admit it or not. There's a reason that when Power 5 programs play FCS programs, they beat them by 70. It's just how it works out. It's okay to admit that some levels are different. It's not to say that there can't be good guys, but they don't have that Power 5 experience yet. And I'm sure they will all step into their own role and kind of be ready to contribute. The other edge rusher, I'm going to go Derek McClendon the second. He's someone that I talked about as a guy that I think could explode this next season. I think Savell Smalls, the former 5-star, I think he'll get looks. I do. But I don't think unless he has a magnificent spring, I don't think he's going to get the starting nod. I just don't. I think he needs to maybe, I don't know the right word. I'm not trying to say he's like, I won't say he's a bust or anything, but he hasn't lived up to his rating yet. And I think he kind of needs to find himself and figure out what his role is for this team, and just maybe figure out his overall standing in football, I guess you could say. Linebackers, I'm going to go with Demoy Kennedy. He's someone that I think will be a star for the Buffs. At Alabama, he didn't play very much, played special teams, even played some running back, a little bit of linebacker. He knows the defense. I think now that he has the opportunity to play, he'll take advantage, and I think he'll be a starter. Then we go to our weak side linebacker. We got Levante Bentley, the grad transfer from Clemson. I think he's one of the more experienced guys we have on this defense. And I think it's going to help make a case to be a leader. Someone who I think will get a lot of snaps at linebacker as well is Brendan Gant, the Florida State transfer, kind of safety hybrid type of guy. I don't know if he'll overtake someone for the starting role, but I do think he'll be on the field quite a bit. One of the corner spots, we obviously have Travis Hunter. Safety, this is where it gets interesting. I've talked about this position multiple times. They have 6 starting caliber safeties, if not 7. So it makes it a little difficult to predict who's going to start here. Shoot. I always get tied up. I think I'm going to go Trevor Woods or Vito Tisdale for one of the safety spots. And then the other one is going to be Shiloh Sanders, and I think Travis Jay will have a big role as well, the Florida State transfer. I think there are going to be a lot of rotations at safety. And then there's also the nickel corner, which I think Miles Slusher, I think he's on the field. I think you could put Shiloh Sanders at the nickel as well. He started off as a corner, got moved to safety. So maybe they move him there and start someone else at one of the other safety spots. The safety position will be the most interesting one for me. I think when the depth chart comes out, it's going to be so-and-so or so-and-so, or like, I don't think it's going to be a definitive 1, 2, 3. And then the other corner, this is where I feel like I get my most disagreements. I'm going to go Amarion Cooper to start, the Florida State transfer, but I think Cormani McClain by the end of the year will be starting opposite Travis Hunter. I think that he's too talented to keep off the field, but I feel like as a freshman, maybe he won't be able to step in right away. Who knows? He could prove me wrong. He very well might prove me wrong. I'm just saying I think Amarion Cooper, we've seen him going head-to-head with a lot of other guys, and so I like what I see there. Punters, we got Mark Bassett, the Louisville transfer. He's good. He's a good punter. He's one. I think he was an all-conference punter in the ACC, and so yeah. And then kickers, I think Jace Feely, but a lot of you guys seem to think Alejandro Mata, so we'll see. Let's dive into the offense. This is where it gets a little trickier. The offensive line, I'm gonna be honest with you, I don't like how it looks. But we got Reggie Young, Tyler Brown, Van Wells, Jack Bailey, and Savion Washington. I think maybe Savion Washington gets a start at left tackle. Isaiah Jota, the junior transfer, JUCO transfer, maybe at right tackle. Jack Bailey at right guard, Van Wells at center, and then Tyler Brown at left guard. This offensive line, I think this is going to be the make or break position group for this team. They're either going to be, I don't think they're going to be really good, but I think they need to be decent enough to where Shadur could get the throw off. I didn't want to spoil my quarterback spot for you, but quarterback Shadur Sanders. Obviously, I didn't think that was up for debate. But let's get into the tight ends. What I think is interesting, I think Louis Passarello gets a start, but I'm also looking at Elijah Yelverton, the walk-on tight end from Iowa. He medically retired. I feel like maybe he makes a case for himself over at tight end. Either way, they don't use tight ends very heavily, so I don't know. I wouldn't feel confident enough to be like, yeah, it's going to be him. But either way, I think those are my tight ends. Wide receivers. This is where it gets very interesting. I'll name 4 starting wide receivers because I'm not gonna act like they use tight ends that frequently. So Travis Hunter is one of them. Xavier Weaver, Jimmy Horn, leaving one spot. I think Javon Antonio will get that spot, but there's 3 guys that I need to see rotate in. Adam Hopkins, Amarion Miller, both freshmen, and then Jalen Ellis, the Baylor transfer. I think those are the guys that are rotating in. Maybe Willie Gaines as well. Wide receiver, I don't envy the wide receiver coach who's going to have to balance having to rotate all these talented guys in. I think there's going to be some unhappy campers. I do. I think there's going to be guys that transferred in and thought they'd have a bigger role, and they're not. And I think that's kind of the hard part about having a roster made up of this many transfers. But that's the risk you take, I guess. And then quarterback, obviously, Shadur. I already said that. Running back, Alton McCaskill, Kavosi Smoke. I think Dylan Edwards and Kavosi Smoke will each have some sort of role, but I think Alton McCaskill has the opportunity to claim this backfield to be his and kind of be the lead back, like he was back in Houston and where he had all of his success. So yeah, those are my projected starters. I can't wait for that first depth chart to come out. We could compare. I'd give my confidence level about we'll go 7.5. The offensive line and the safeties and the defense line are where I'm most concerned about maybe making a mistake there, just because I feel like those have the most guys up for grabs, or they're the most uncertain, like the trenches are. Either way, that's my prediction, and I'm sticking with it. This episode of Locked On Buffs is brought to you by FanDuel. Take your first swing at betting MLB on FanDuel and get 10 times your first bet amount in bonus bets up to $200. That's right. Just bet $20 and you'll land $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. That's $200 you can spend betting everything from money line, over or under, to who you think is going to get the first home run. All on an app that's safe, secure, and super easy to use. That's the most important part. Plus, when you win, you get paid instantly. There's no waiting. There's no better place to bet on MLB than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So sign up today and visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get up to $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel, the official partner of Major League Baseball. Okay, so I was diving into I like to read what everybody else writes about Colorado. I think that's the best way to kind of, maybe if I'm missing on something, maybe get a different opinion. I think there's a lot to be learned from what other people have to say. And so there's an article out there that was breaking down the every Pac-12 team's most important game. And for Colorado, they had Stanford, because it was on 3. They were citing that this could be Colorado's first, maybe only Pac-12 win. They do play Arizona State like the week before, though, so I don't know how. I'm very confident that Colorado could beat Arizona State. If they don't, it's going to be tough sledding, because based off my record prediction, because I had Colorado winning, I think it was 6 games. Yeah, it was 6 games. I had them starting the season. I believe it was, let's see. I had them starting the season 2-2. So if they lose to Arizona State, puts them at 2-3. That's a tough draw. And because then they have Stanford, which is a winnable game, and then they have at UCLA versus Oregon State versus Arizona. There's no really the easiest part of Colorado's schedule is quote unquote easy. I would say Nebraska and Colorado State, and even then, 2 rivalry games can be very intense. So I don't know how I feel about that, but I don't think Stanford's the most important game. I think if you're talking about the most winnable game, sure. I mean, Stanford returns the least amount of production in the entire Power 5. They rank, I believe it's 129th out of 133 FBS teams in returning production. So Stanford is going to be, they're going to have some struggles. There's going to be a lot of growing pains out there in Palo Alto. But Colorado, I feel like they should be able to beat them. But here's the thing. That's not their most important game. I think in terms of importance of confidence, national attention, maybe national silencing the doubters, and just how it would help the team, I think that's a week 2 Nebraska. I think that's the most important game. because, and by the way, I want to thank you guys for making Locked On Buffs your first listen every single day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts. So make sure to tune in, like, subscribe, follow, all that jazz. Nebraska, though, back to it. It's your first home game with Coach Prime at home, obviously. It's a rivalry game. Nebraska is a blue blood. They are one of the few blue bloods in college football. Whether they've been good or not, they would have past success that kind of helps them out there. But here's the thing: Nebraska's in a vulnerable state in terms of Colorado could go in, beat them. It'll be a good enough win to be like people would have to respect Colorado, and it'll be a good enough to win to build confidence for Colorado. Like, I think if Colorado beats Colorado State by 40, I think there's going to be some confidence, but it's Colorado State. Like, is that what we're getting excited about? Every win's exciting, but I think a win over Nebraska is the most important thing for Colorado in 2023 because you're beating a Big Ten program. You're beating a blue blood program. You're beating a program that you're rivals with. You're beating a program that's kind of throwing some shade at you this whole offseason. So I think there's a lot of unanswered this would silence a lot of critics, especially the people that are saying Nebraska or Colorado is going to start the season 1-4, 1-5. That'd be a huge win because that adds another twist, maybe builds some confidence, maybe grows the confidence of the team a little bit more. And that's what we need. We need more confidence, not more doubters. Not like you guys. You guys are doubters down there. I see you. But I think that Nebraska game is much more important than the Stanford game. Another game that I would pinpoint as important is probably Arizona. Late in the season, coming off a tough back-to-back stretch of at UCLA versus Oregon State. You gotta win them when you can. And I think that Arizona game is one of the ones that they could win at home. In November, it's going to be cold. Maybe Arizona struggles to throw in the cold. So we'll just have to wait and see. But I think that Nebraska game is much more important than the Stanford game in terms of the national, not only how people nationally would view it, but just I'm sure it would probably feel a lot better when you win that game compared to the Stanford game. Either way, when we come back, we're going to be talking about the latest in Pac-12 expansion rumors when we're back. Welcome back. We're talking about the latest Pac-12 expansion rumors that I saw from the Dan Patrick Show. Obviously, if you haven't been following the Pac-12's expansion, realignment, media rights saga, it's not going well, to say the least. The Pac-12, it's been over a year now, literally, officially, since USC and UCLA announced that they are leaving the Big Ten, or for the Big Ten, excuse me. And the Pac-12 has been recovering ever since. They need to get a media rights deal. The Big 12 kind of jumped them in line, got their deal. They expanded, added Cincinnati, BYU, UCF, and who am I missing? Houston. There it is. And the Pac-12 has kind of been in this weird state of, okay, we need to get our media rights deal first. No media rights deal secure. A lot of expansion rumors, though. A lot of expansion rumors. And it's not working out. San Diego State announced they were leaving the Mountain West, even though they said that they didn't mean to, but the Mountain West is like, yeah, you did. And they didn't get an invite to the Pac-12 because they didn't have a media rights deal. So San Diego State just hung out there to dry. SMU's just sitting there like, I don't know what we're going to do. We want to join the Pac-12, but we got to see what happens. So, yeah, that's my little 1-minute summary on what's happening. But according to Dan Patrick, his sources are telling him that San Diego State is still planning on joining the Pac-12, as they should be. I think the hard part for San Diego State was they had that deadline that was July 1st, where if they didn't tell the Mountain West that they were leaving, that they would have to pay $34 million instead of $17 million to lead the conference. But they should have – I feel like they were trying to call the Pac-12's bluff that they wouldn't offer them or something, and it didn't work out. They should have just waited. There's no shame. I think the Pac-12 – there's no shame in playing with 10 teams next season. There's really not. I think all the Big 12 people are going to be like, oh, you have 10 teams. The Big 12 has had 10 teams since Missouri, Texas A&M, and all those teams left. So relax, pump the brakes. 10 teams is okay for 1 year. So San Diego State joining is not surprising. He also said the conference is hoping to add SMU with Boise State and UNLV as long shot possibilities. This is interesting because when I talked to John Canzano, SMU has always been in, or not in, but they're the next team in. It's San Diego State, SMU 1-2, very definitive. And then it's like San Diego State, SMU, huge gap, Colorado State, everyone else. So no mention of Colorado State here. Interesting. So this either means that Colorado, they're confident that they're keeping Colorado because realistically, there's no point in adding Colorado State unless you're that into that the Rocky Mountain rivalry or the Rocky Mountain showdown. Or if Colorado, you're losing that Colorado market. Boise State, they don't have a good market. It's very interesting that they would get the nod here. And UNLV, decent market. I would expect a program like Tulane, and they don't have the academics either. So that's interesting. I would expect a program like Tulane to get a look, but guess not. But that is what that's what Dan Patrick's saying. So I don't know how. I've never really considered the Pac-12 to be in a position to add 4. I think if they were to add 4, it would probably be SMU, San Diego State, Tulane, Colorado State, or Rice. Neither Boise State or UNLV have really ever been considered. So that's interesting. But that's what his sources are telling him. So I'm not going to call him out, but that's interesting. But either way, that's all I have for you today. So I hope you enjoyed this new episode of Locked on Buffs. Make sure to like, subscribe, follow. Next Friday, we're going to have former USC quarterback Max Brown on, Pac-12 analyst, to talk about the Buffs and the adjustments Shedeur Sanders will face playing quarterback. You guys won't want to miss it. Have a great day. Have a great Friday, and I will see you guys next week.